Alright, so it's almost impossible for me to review this show without comparing it to the original Z Funimation dub with the Faulkner score. So this is going to be me doing both simultaneously, as in me reviewing Kai, but also comparing it to the original Funimation dub, at least my comparison of it. This will not be me analyzing every single detail about each show, but instead giving my general perspective. So if you've not seen either show and don't want spoilers, exit this video now. 3, 2, 1... Alright, so I grew up with the OG Z dub, and it was the shit. It was the only anime besides Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! I had ever watched until I started becoming a more regular anime watcher around the time Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood came out. Even after having a larger amount of anime watching under my belt, I still proclaim that Dragon Ball Z, the English dub in particular, was the greatest anime of all time. But then, after years of not having actually even watched it, I gave it a rewatch in early 2020 before a certain lockdown that caused some people for some reason to hoard toilet paper, and oh boy, the show is just not very good. That dub, at least, this is not very good, and it's been more apparent after watching Kai. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a lot of nostalgia for the OG dub overall. Bruce Faulkner's score is still my favorite Dragon Ball score, for example. With the exception of a few examples I'll give later about that score of like ways it kind of didn't work for me. Yeah, but also there are some changes that made to certain lines for the original dub that I think are actually better than the original Japanese or Kai's dialogue, and some voice actors that were replaced in Kai where I preferred the original dub voices, like Kid Gohan and Bulma, for example. 18 as well, actually. But besides those exceptions, the original dub is just not it. I definitely got some problems with Kai as well, and I'll get to them, but I'm just tired of all the OG dub fanboys thinking the view their nostalgia goggles give them is reality. There's nothing wrong with having nostalgia. Hell, I'll be the first to admit there are things that I unapologetically love, even though they're probably not that good due to the nostalgia I feel for them. I'm actually thinking about doing a video about nostalgia goggles when it comes to things like Star Wars prequels and shit like that. That in particular. Actually, I'm going to do a video about that, about how people glaze the Star Wars prequels these days. I'll get to that. I have thoughts on that. But anyway, I just think it's important to know the difference between what you like and what is good, because they're not always the same thing. Now that I've got that little rant out of the way, I'll talk more about what I preferred about Kai. Besides just it overall was better dialogue, or overall has better dialogue with a few exceptions in Z's corner. The first thing I of course noticed, and my personal biggest praise of Kai, is the pacing. This show doesn't waste any time. Unlike Z, where they just stare at each other for like 5 episodes before any actual fucking fighting begins. There are definitely still a handful of filler episodes in Z, though, that I actually really liked, and in some cases actually enhanced the story. That I do miss, but overall, I prefer Kai's minimum to no filler approach. The second thing that's better in Kai is the voice acting. Most of Z's casts returned, and have clearly grown a lot as actors, especially Sean Schemmel. I always forget how to pronounce his name, but yeah, because like the early years of producing the original Z dub were rough, and the beginning of the show through Frieza Saga had the fewest examples of where I preferred the original Z acting and dialogue over Kai. Also, if you want to go original dub, it technically was the Ocean dub, and then the Funimation dub came in and started doing it around like somewhere Namek, Frieza, whatever. So a lot of the quote-unquote original Funimation dub for those sagas is actually a redub anyway. But I still, even with those, yeah, I prefer fucking Kai when it comes to those sagas, without a doubt. They have the least amount of examples where I prefer the original Z dub. Anyway, the main things they did in Kai that I didn't like are actually music related. First, and I'm really sorry to the people that actually liked Dragon Soul, but I can't stand the opening and ending fucking themes or whatever to Kai. Pre-final chapters, at least, I kind of have different. I like those a little more. The opening and ending like credit themes or whatever. But actually, speaking of the final chapters, it's really annoying that they only seem to write 5 songs for the fucking score that they just replay over and over and over and over and over and over again throughout every episode. What really sucks is I actually really liked those tracks when I first heard them, but by the end, I didn't fucking want to hear them ever again. This transitions really well into talking about what I didn't like about my favorite thing from the original Z dub, which is the Falconer soundtrack. The only 2 problems I had with this dub soundtrack are, 1, as great as it was when it worked, were plenty of times where that style just didn't fit the vibe of the scene as good as like the original Japanese score. And 2, for whatever reason, it was a requirement when they were making the original dub to have the music playing literally at all times, which gets annoying, and it doesn't let a lot of scenes breathe the way they should. Though sometimes it did actually improve the certain scenes in particular where they just stare at each other, right? It just made it feel more epic, even though all they were doing was essentially nothing. It gave the illusion that more was going on than what there actually was. I'm a musician at heart, and a piece of media having a good soundtrack definitely means it's more likely I'll give it more attention and revisit it more often than something that has a soundtrack I don't like as much. But it doesn't necessarily make the content I'm watching like better than something that's just better written and acted. So overall, I do prefer Kai to the OG dub, but part of me wants to edit my own version of the show that's got like a hybrid of the Falconer and original Japanese scores, and maybe even insert some of the more iconic lines from the original Z dub in place of the not as great lines in Kai. Anyway, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and I'm not necessarily trying to sway someone into adopting mine. I just wanted to give my point of view on these shows and how the fan base can really irritate me, like a lot of the time, most of the time, pretty much all the time it seems like, at least lately. I mean, just getting way too into fucking, yeah, no, anyway, but that's all I really have on that. Just kind of wanted to go into my personal thoughts on it, and I don't want to say what I'm saying is fact, even though I did kind of make that point about knowing the difference between when you like something when something's good. But I don't know, I don't know, there's just a lot of biases out there that people try to like claim like this is fact, and that just annoys the fuck out of me. So anyway, that's it for now. See ya.